There is a verse in the Bible that has been quoted at anxious people for centuries, printed on coffee mugs, stitched into throw pillows, shared in text messages at 2 in the morning by well-meaning friends who do not know what else to say. And yet, for the majority of the people who receive it, it does not work. Not because the verse is wrong, not because God has forgotten about them, but because no one ever explained what it actually means. No one ever told them what Paul was really communicating when he wrote those words from a prison cell in Rome. No one unpacked the mechanics, the actual spiritual and psychological mechanism beneath the words that makes this verse not merely a comfort, but a cure. Understanding Philippians 4.6 fully means grasping not just what it says, but what it does, how it works, and why anxiety, even the kind that has followed a person for years, does not get the final word. But before arriving at the solution, the problem must be understood clearly, because anxiety is not what most people think it is. A misdiagnosis leads to ineffective treatment, no matter how sincerely it is applied. At its most basic level, anxiety is the brain's attempt to solve an unsolvable problem. Something is uncertain in the future: a relationship, a medical diagnosis, a financial situation, a child who has not arrived where you expected them to be by now. The mind locks onto that uncertainty and begins running calculations. What if this happens? What if that happens? How would I survive if? The calculations never end because the uncertainty never resolves, because the future never becomes certain enough to satisfy the part of the brain that requires certainty in order to feel safe. And so sleep becomes elusive. The chest tightens. The thought you were managing so well not to think about surfaces again at the worst possible moment. In the middle of a meeting, in the quiet of a car ride, in the fragile space between waking and sleeping when the defenses have dissolved. Consider a woman named Elena. She had been a Christian for over 20 years. She knew her Bible. She led a small group on Wednesday nights, served in her church, and prayed every morning. She also had anxiety so severe that some days she could not leave her house. Not because her faith was weak, not because she was not trying hard enough, but because everyone around her, including people she deeply respected, had handed her the same prescription. Just trust God more, pray harder, believe bigger, read Philippians 4.6. Do not be anxious about anything. Just stop being anxious. As if she had not thought of that. There is something quietly devastating about being instructed to stop feeling the very thing you cannot stop feeling. It does not produce peace. It produces shame. And shame layered on top of anxiety is one of the heaviest burdens a human being can carry. The answer is in the passage itself, fully and completely, but it hides in plain sight. Philippians 4.6-7 reads, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." Most people hear the first 4 words, "Do not be anxious," and stop there. They receive it as a command, a prohibition. Stop doing the thing. As if Paul were a police officer writing a citation for the crime of worrying. But that is not what this passage is. Paul is not writing from a comfortable office. He is writing from prison. He has been beaten, shipwrecked, stoned, abandoned, and betrayed. He knows suffering at a level most people will never approach. He is not dismissing anxiety from a position of ease. He is speaking from the other side of it, from a place of discovered peace, and he is handing the reader the map he used to get there. The command is not stop feeling anxious. The command is do this instead. The structure of the verse carries everything. Do not be anxious about anything. But that word is pivotal. Paul is not saying refuse the anxiety. He is saying redirect it. Here is where to put the energy that anxiety wants to spend spinning in circles. Here is what to do with the weight you are carrying. But in everything, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. 3 words buried in that instruction change everything. With thanksgiving. Not pray desperately. Not pray frantically. Not storm the gates of heaven demanding immediate resolution. Pray with thanksgiving. That phrase has confused people for generations. How does one give thanks when everything is falling apart? How does a person feel grateful when the diagnosis is bad, when the marriage is broken, when the prodigal has not yet come home? Here is what Paul means, and here is where the mechanism clicks into place. Thanksgiving is not a feeling to be manufactured. It is a declaration of what is already known to be true about God, regardless of what is currently true about one's circumstances. When Paul says pray with thanksgiving, he means come to God not merely with your problem, but with your history. Come with the memory of every time he came through before. Come with the record, however imperfect, of his faithfulness in the past. Come saying,
God, I do not understand this. I am frightened. I am overwhelmed. And I know who you are. I know what you have done. I know you have not changed.
That and is transformative. It does not erase the fear. It puts the fear in context. It places the anxiety inside a larger story, a story that does not end with your worst-case scenario. This mechanism of thanksgiving as deliberate remembrance is not unique to Philippians. It is scattered throughout the Psalms, those raw, unfiltered prayers that read less like devotionals and more like someone actually speaking to God under pressure. Psalm 77 is a striking example. The writer Asaph opens with one of the most honest prayers in all of Scripture. I cried out to God for help. I cried out to God to hear me. When I was in distress, I sought the Lord. At night, I stretched out untiring hands, and I would not be comforted. He cannot sleep. He is too troubled to speak. His spirit is in despair. This is not the prayer of someone who has it all together. But then something shifts. Beginning at verse 10, Asaph starts to remember. He turns his attention from what he feels about God in this moment to what he knows about God from history. I will remember the deeds of the Lord. Yes, I will remember your miracles of long ago. I will consider all your works and meditate on all your mighty deeds. He preaches to himself. He interrupts the anxiety spiral not by suppressing the feeling, but by introducing a competing truth, not a denial of his pain, but a declaration of God's character that is larger than his pain. That is the thanksgiving Paul is describing, not manufactured happiness, deliberate remembrance. This is precisely why anxiety lies so effectively. Anxiety deals only in the present problem and the imagined future catastrophe. It does not show the full picture. It shows the storm and hides the anchor. Thanksgiving forces the eyes back onto the anchor. The peace described in verse 7 of Philippians 4 is the payoff of this practice, and it is extraordinary.
And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus.
Notice what the verse does not promise. It does not say the problem will be solved. It does not say the diagnosis will come back clean. It does not say everything feared will be avoided. It says the peace of God will guard your heart and your mind. The Greek word translated guard here is a military term. It means to stand watch, to garrison, to post soldiers at a gate. Paul is describing the peace of God as a standing army stationed at the entrance of the inner life, keeping watch so that panic cannot breach the walls. And this peace, Paul notes, transcends understanding. There will come a moment when the circumstances have not changed, when the problem is still present and the uncertainty still real, and somehow, inexplicably, you will find yourself breathing. You will find yourself held, not because the storm stopped, because something steadied you within it. Consider a man named James, a surgeon, meticulous and detail-oriented, someone whose entire professional identity was built on control, on certainty, on knowing exactly what came next. Then his youngest son was diagnosed with a serious illness, and for the first time in his adult life, James found himself in a situation he could not operate his way out of. He could not research his way to certainty. He could not work harder and fix this. He came to his pastor desperate, not knowing what to do with the anxiety that had moved into his chest like an unwanted tenant. His pastor did not tell him to stop worrying. Instead, he asked a different question.
Can you tell me one time in your life when you were completely convinced God had abandoned you, and it turned out you were right?
James sat with that question for a long time. He could not think of a single instance. Not one moment in his 40.7 years when God had actually left him to face something alone, though there had been many moments when it felt that way. Looking back, every one of those moments had contained something. Some grace, some provision, some presence that he had only recognized in hindsight. That conversation did not heal his son immediately. The journey was long and hard, and filled with moments of fear. But months later, James told his pastor that something had changed in him that day. Not his circumstances, his posture. He had stopped trying to see the whole road and started walking one day at a time, with his eyes on the one who could see further than he could. That is Philippians 4:6 lived out in real life. There is something else that must be said directly, because leaving it unsaid would leave this conversation incomplete for a significant portion of people. Some anxiety is clinical. Some is rooted in brain chemistry, in trauma, in physiological realities that require professional care. There is no Bible verse, no matter how true or powerful, that is a substitute for that care. God gave us medicine. God gave us therapists. God gave us the science of the human mind. Using those resources is not a failure of faith. It is wisdom. It is stewardship of the body and mind God gave you. What Philippians 4 offers is not a replacement for professional care. It is what you bring into the room alongside it. It is the foundation of security that can hold you even while you do the hard work of healing. The peace of God and the help of a counselor are not in competition. They are companions. Returning to the passage one final time, Paul writes in everything, not just the big fears, not just the life-or-death situations, everything. That word matters because anxiety has a remarkable ability to scale. It starts with the serious things, and once it becomes comfortable in a life, it begins attaching itself to smaller things. The traffic, the awkward text message left unread, the meeting tomorrow, the thing you said 3 weeks ago that keeps replaying. Paul's instruction covers all of it. There is no category of worry too small to bring to God. No prayer too mundane. No fear too embarrassing. No anxiety too trivial. In everything means the specific, named, concrete thing that is keeping you awake tonight. Not a vague God, I'm anxious, but God, I am afraid that this specific thing is going to happen and I cannot stop thinking about it, and I need you in this exact spot. The specificity matters. A vague prayer tends to produce a vague sense of peace, but a prayer that names the fear, that drags it out of the dark and into the light, does something to the fear. Something shifts when you say it aloud to God instead of turning it endlessly in your own mind. There is something about spoken prayer, about externalizing the internal storm, that interrupts the loop. Psychologists call it cognitive reappraisal. Ancient Christians simply called it prayer. But the mechanism is real. Honesty requires acknowledging what Paul does not promise in this passage. He does not promise that the thing you fear will not happen. He does not promise that prayers will be answered precisely as you want them answered. He does not promise a life without storms. What he promises is presence inside the storm. What he promises is a peace that does not require perfect circumstances in order to exist. What he promises is a God who is not surprised by your situation, not overwhelmed by what overwhelms you, and who has not looked at your life and decided it was too complicated. There is a story in the Gospels that speaks directly to this. Jesus and his disciples are crossing the Sea of Galilee when one of the violent, sudden squalls for which that sea is known rises without warning. Waves crash into the boat. The disciples are terrified, and Jesus is asleep in the stern. They wake him, essentially asking, "Don't you care that we're about to die?" He rises, speaks to the wind and the waves, and the storm stops. Then he asks them, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" Taken out of context, that question can sound like a scolding, as though Jesus is dismissing the very real danger they were in. But look at what he actually did. He did not tell them to feel less afraid. He addressed the source of the fear. He entered the storm with them. He calmed it. And notice, he was in the boat the entire time. He was present in the storm before he calmed it. He did not wait for perfect conditions to be with them. That is the promise beneath Philippians 4. Not that God will always immediately remove the source of your anxiety, but that he is in the boat. The peace he offers is available in the middle of the storm, not only on the other side of it. For those who want something practical, something that can be done tonight, or tomorrow morning, or whenever the anxiety rises, the prayer Paul describes in verse 6 has a specific anatomy, and when it is prayed intentionally, following the shape Paul gives it, something happens. Begin with thanksgiving. Before naming the request, name 3 things you know to be true about God. Not 3 things that feel true right now, but 3 things you know. He is faithful. He has not abandoned you before. He is not limited by what is currently limiting you. Start there. Anchor yourself there. Then name the fear specifically. Say it out loud if possible.
God, I am afraid that.
And then finish the sentence completely and honestly. No spiritual language, no cleaned up version. The real thing, the actual fear, the exact worst-case scenario the mind keeps rehearsing. Give it to him by name. Then release the outcome. This is the hardest part. Say something like,
God, I don't know how this resolves. I don't know what you're doing, but I trust that you are doing something. I trust that you can see this whole thing in ways I cannot. I'm putting this down. I'm leaving it with you.
And then stop. Do not immediately pick it back up. Do not restart the calculations the moment the prayer ends. The peace may not arrive instantly. Often it does not, but it comes. For many people, it comes in the middle of the night, in the strange quiet after the prayer, when they realize their breathing has changed, when they notice the grip on their chest has loosened. Not because the problem is solved, because they are no longer carrying it alone. Elena, the woman introduced at the beginning, the one who led the small group and served faithfully and still could not get out of bed on some days, eventually found her way to a good therapist who helped her understand the clinical dimension of what she was experiencing. Alongside that professional work, she rebuilt her prayer life, not as a performance or an obligation, but as a conversation. Specific, honest, and grateful, not for the struggle, but for the one walking through it with her. She described the change as not dramatic. There was no lightning-bolt moment. It was more like learning to breathe differently, like her lungs had always been capable of taking in more air, but she had spent years taking shallow breaths. Slowly, painfully, she learned to breathe deep again. Philippians 4:7 says the peace of God will guard your heart and your mind. Elena said it felt exactly like that, as though something were watching the door, as though the panic attacks no longer had full access, as though there were a buffer between the fear and her core self that had not existed before. Not perfect, not finished, but real. Anxiety tells a story. It says the feared outcome is likely, that you cannot survive it if it arrives, that God is either unaware of your situation or unwilling to help, that the fear is the truest thing about your life right now. Every single one of those claims is a lie. The Bible's answer to anxiety is not suppression. It is not positive thinking. It is not telling yourself everything will be fine when you genuinely do not know that it will. It is a reorientation, a turning of the whole self toward a God who is bigger than the thing you are afraid of. A specific, honest, grateful conversation that says,
Here is what I'm carrying. Here is what I know about you. Here is what I cannot control. I am choosing to trust you with what I cannot control.
And then the peace comes. Not always immediately, not always completely, but it comes. It transcends understanding because it is not produced by understanding. It is not contingent on circumstances resolving. It is not a product of positive thinking or mental discipline. It is the peace of God given by God to people who have run out of their own peace and have finally come to the right place to find more. You are not too anxious for this to work. Your situation is not too complicated. Your fear is not too large. God has not looked at your life and decided you are beyond the reach of this promise. Paul wrote these words from a prison cell with chains on his wrists, facing a trial whose outcome could mean his execution. And he wrote about peace not as a future hope for when things improved, but as a present reality in the middle of the worst circumstances of his life. If the peace of God could reach Paul in that place, it can reach you in yours. Bring it to him. All of it. The fear too embarrassing to say aloud. The worst-case scenario rehearsed endlessly in the mind. The thing that surfaces at 3 in the morning when everything is quiet and the anxiety is loud. Bring it. With honesty, with gratitude for what you know to be true even when you cannot feel it, with a specific, named, concrete weight of it. And then let the peace of God do what it promises to do. Let it guard the door. That is not a platitude. That is not a throw-pillow verse. That is a promise from the God who was in the boat in the middle of the storm, who is in your boat right now, and who has not once in all of human history abandoned anyone who came to him with their fear. Do not be anxious about anything. Not because anxiety is a sin, not because your fear is not real, but because there is somewhere to put it. There is someone to give it to. And the peace that comes from giving it is beyond anything you can produce on your own. Start there. The rest follows.